Hey, thank you all so much for being here. Great group. We're super excited today to have Chef Liam Luttrell Rowland here. It's going to be an absolutely remarkable event because Liam has so many skills and such a great teaching experience. So yeah, looking forward to this. So I'm Sarah. I work with Sustainable Cape. We're a wonderful nonprofit in Truro. We run this whole Harvest Highlight series, and there's 8 workshops in total that run from January through June. This year we're doing them at 3 local libraries. So Wellfleet, this is our first one at Wellfleet Library, Truro Library, and then Provincetown Library. So be sure to be in touch. If you haven't given us your email, please do, because we want to make sure you know about these awesome events. We have a few more in the series. So we'll be back here May 11th with the Wampanoag chef. We have a Ukrainian chef coming in June and another Wampanoag chef in June. So great things coming, and we're hoping to do this series year after year. We get funding from the Massachusetts Department of Agricultural Resources, so we're able to pay the chef and also pay the farmer. So every month we celebrate a local crop and a local farmer. And this month it's eggs from Victoria from Wellfleet Chicken Coop. We have her stunning eggs here that Liam will use. Different months, you know, we've celebrated garlic, turnips, carrots, greens, and it's really nice to be able to purchase $400 worth of this crop and then give that food to 3 local community kitchens so that they can use the food in their lunch program and be able to feed the community. So we have this, and then we have this like Harvester Highlight sister program. And with that comes this great newsletter every month. So if you're looking to learn about the farmers markets and food access programs, there's a lot of information on that sheet and also on our website, sustainablecape.org. And our director, Francie Randolph, is here today, making it all possible. Francie. Yeah. So we run the Truro and Easttown farmers markets. We have farmer in the school programs at Provincetown, Truro, Wellfleet, and soon to be Eastham. I run the children's garden. I'm the farmer at the library doing an after-school program. So a lot of wonderful things happening in the community. So if you'd like to participate or volunteer, I see a lot of our volunteers here, which is super exciting. Please reach out, because yeah, the community work is just the best. It's so meaningful, and the ripple effect is profound. So it's great to have such a community member here today, Chef Liam. Liam currently owns Salty Market in Truro. They're now open in North Truro, so be sure to go up there. Liam has a ton of culinary experience working with top James Beard Award chefs like Elliot Moss and Katie Button and Barbara Lynch. He was recognized in 2018 by Ocean Spray for his work at Spindler's, and just has so much to share. And today he's actually going to share a family recipe and also talk about his recipe and his work in this great book, The Taste of Wellfleet. So let's welcome Chef Liam.
I'm always grateful to be here with Sustainable Cape, and we've done a couple events, a couple classes. It's very important, the mission of Sustainable Cape, that we do outreach and education through food. And food is one of the ways that our culture passes knowledge, and we feel like having people experience food together in groups and learn about food is one of the reasons and one of the ways that we can grow communities. So I'm always amazed by what the organization does, especially in our school system for the kids, and organizing the market as well. So I've been working with Sustainable Cape for a long time, and I'm very grateful to continue the work. And today I didn't want to bore you guys. It's been a long time since I taught. I have a little bit of a teaching background actually. I worked for years in Cape Cod as a chef and someone who grew food. And hey, how we doing?
Good, thanks. Good to see you.
I have an undergrad from UNC Asheville, so I grew up in North Carolina actually, and I grew up coming to Cape Cod. My first job was down here at the pier where Soraldi is now. I asked for my first job when I was 4, and he said, no, you have to be 10. So I told Uncle Frank I was 10, and he said, okay, you start tomorrow. So I actually worked with Uncle Frank for 10 years. And then I ran a restaurant at the time when I was 20, very young, here at the Juice, which is in Wellfleet Center. And we grew all our own food at the time. We had no experience. We had no idea what we were doing, but we were incredibly passionate about local food and sort of like great food. So that kind of launched me to an interest in food. I ended up going to work with great people. I was there when the Blackfish opened. I worked with Brenda Stephanie when she had the Terra Luna, and before Tony bought it, and I worked with a bunch of people here on Cape Cod, basically. And then I got an opportunity. I returned to Asheville, North Carolina, and one of the things that I want to talk a little bit about today is just food education. And I wanted to teach, so I was teaching people coming out of the criminal justice system how to cook, and it was one of our ways that we actually, job placement in the culinary industry is huge. It's one of the few industries where there is re-entry. So it's a great thing. I mean, obviously there's a million reasons why food is powerful, but food education in particular is very important to me because I feel like it's an equalizer. And one of the things about that was I didn't want to, I wanted to be more informed, so I ended up going back to pastry school. And I wanted a 2-year degree in culinary so I could actually teach through university and also feel comfortable teaching students. And I went to AV Tech, which is an amazing culinary school in North Carolina, and they're always competing with CIA for the national championship, and they're just an amazing group of people. And I worked with this guy, Chef Donatelli, that ran the pastry department at UNCA in Asheville. So, we're going to learn a chocolate cake recipe, and we're going to learn a crème brûlée or an anglaise recipe. So it's actually 2 recipes that we're going to teach today, but I want to get quickly through the first because then I can pop it in the oven, and at the end of the day we can eat something, okay? You guys can stop me whenever you want and to slow down or to go a little faster. So we're going to start with the chocolate cake. I was telling you guys about Asheville and being at with Chef Donatelli. This is a recipe that I actually used even before I went to culinary school, and I'm sure everybody knows chocolate cakes, but I love this one because it was actually my grandfather's mother's cake. It's called the Charlie Chaplin cake, and it was served during Passover. And my mom is Irish and my dad is Jewish, so one of the first things that my grandfather's mother taught my mother was how to make a cake for Passover. So we're gonna, I didn't really know that I was making a soufflé cake my whole life until I went to culinary school. And this is one of the examples that I'm talking about where a lot of this is about, I'm sure everyone in this room knows something delicious they can bake. And one of the things that we want to think about is not only that end product, but the process of what we're doing. So we're gonna cook a soufflé cake. Essentially, the eggs are going to act as a leavener for this cake. That's why we don't need to use flour. So the first thing that we'll do, I love this recipe because you can just set it and forget. We just put in the chocolate. Okay, this is 15 ounces of chocolate. We're going to put in the sugar. All right, this is 1 cup or 8 ounces of sugar. And we're going to put in the butter, okay? I'm actually going to save just a tiny, tiny bit of butter back for something later that we'll talk about. But I have essentially 1 stick of butter. So I love this recipe because for me, I'm a chef and I'm always running around and I have a million things to do. So it's very easy because I can just get this step going and then I can go to separating my eggs. So 2 things to observe. One is in the French kitchen, in culinary school, they would call this mise en place. This means things in place, and I have all my ingredients already measured and ready to go. And that will really help you execute multiple recipes at once when you're trying to multitask. And it also just creates a more mindful kitchen. So I'll just turn that down a tiny bit. I don't want to mess with it. It's all good. And we'll start to pay attention to our eggs. So me and Victoria met years ago. Victoria is an amazing farmer, and she's just a very powerful person. She also sells delicious cheeses, and I would consider Victoria a real gourmet person. She's just been around food her whole life, and her whole thing has been helping chefs get product. So as a chef, we always look for purveyors like Victoria that actually care about the ingredients. And I remember her selling duck eggs to Eric when we were opening the Blackfish. And even something like that, like one of the dishes we made, I don't know if you tried the dish, but it was a fried duck egg over frisee. The dish actually originated after the egg. So it's a cool thing when you find a farmer that you love working with, and Victoria is one of them. Hey.
How different is a duck egg from a regular egg?
Oh, thanks. It's a lot larger, and it's probably twice, if not 3 times the size in terms of ounces. It's great because the yolk is very rich. So for that salad, we wanted to have the crispy outside, and then we wanted the yolk to sort of make part of the dressing. But flavor-wise, I don't know. I think different eggs are different. We use quail, we use duck, we use chicken. But the duck egg is delicious for savory applications. I haven't used it that much in baking. So I'm going to start here. This recipe is 9 eggs. I have my chocolate going. We're going to get the soufflé cake going, and we're going to get it in the oven. Most folks, I'm sure, have made chocolate cake or made some form of cake, right? This is just something, I didn't even know if I should show this to you guys, but I just wanted to show you how I separate eggs. I separate it in the shell here, and you never have to worry about the... Another way you could do it is you could also use your hands if you wanted to. You could crack the egg and let the yolk run here. But I like to crack them in the shell. And I always save back my whites because in this case, we're going to use the white and the yolk. But even in applications like the next one where we have just the yolks, we can use the whites for something else. And it is important that this recipe that we have the room temperature eggs, so those have been sitting for a while.
Can you freeze the egg whites?
Yeah, we can freeze the egg whites, and you know, surprisingly, one of the beauties of eggs is how stable they are. So now we know a lot about food safety, and especially like in the schools, we have to be very diligent with populations that are older or younger that could be susceptible to some sort of illness, foodborne illness. But in general, the egg is one of the most stable and rich foods that is around, and that's why it's been around for so long. So for example, the fishermen of this region actually took eggs out on the boats, and they never refrigerated the eggs. They let them sit out on these boats for months. They went deep fishing. And also with the eggs, like in pastry school, most French chefs that are working in pastry, they age their egg whites. So like whereas the health department here in this country would tell you to get rid of anything if it's any older than 7 to 10 days, in France they actually take a lot of their egg whites and they'll have them in the fridge for up to like 2 months. So it's a very stable product. I'm not encouraging anything, but the point is that I love that about eggs, that they're so healthy. So I was working, I went down to Asheville, and I knew I wanted to teach the people coming out of the criminal justice system and living in public housing, and I was working with a really cool nonprofit that did food access very similar to Sustainable Cape. And I also was working at a restaurant with this guy, Elliot Moss, and there was 3 of us on the line. So my job essentially was to be the pastry chef of this restaurant called the Admiral. And Elliot ended up getting the James Beard nomination for that restaurant, which was a great honor, and it brought a ton of attention to the restaurant. But it was really cool because during the daytime, I remember that part of my life very tired, but I also was so happy. But essentially, I was working 3 jobs. I was going to get like a higher education in culinary. I was teaching during the daytime, and then I was working as the pastry chef at night, and we would actually make the goods. So I had 3 desserts on the menu, and then the pastry chef at that restaurant had to work the line. So I wouldn't finish up until like 11 o'clock at night. I'm gonna save these shells, we're gonna put them in the compost, okay? It's a brilliant, I use eggs a lot in my garden, I love them in the compost. So I got to pastry school, and it was wild because I was like, I know how to cook, but it was really actually eye-opening to go to culinary school and just listen to the way that they taught culinary. It's less to me about whether you know that or not. I think a lot of cooking is subjective, and we all have recipes we love, and I'm sure many of you can make a cake that's just as good as this. And it's more about the familiarity of the ingredients and learning technique. Because when you learn a technique, you can really do a lot. So, for example, this right here is a ganache. And if I wanted to, I would have started with just the chocolate. I would have added a little less sugar. I would have mounted it with butter and cream at the very end. But this in itself could be a sauce. I'm using it in the cake recipe. But that's one of the examples that I'm thinking of today. Is like, at the end of the day today, we'll talk about a recipe that is anglaise, that becomes a sauce, but it could also be frozen and used as an ice cream. It could also be put into a ramekin and cooked slow in a 300-degree oven, and it would be a brûlée. So what I love about pastry is that it's really roughly about 6 to 12 ingredients. I mean, everything is made with the same things. But the technique that you know around those ingredients is what transforms the chemistry of what you create. Yes?
So I'm making a lemon pudding cake here, and I've already separated the eggs and refrigerated them. Why should I bring those up to room temperature, and why is it important that the eggs be at room temperature for this?
That's a great question. I think if you've already separated them, so you say you have the yolks or the whites?
I'm using both, and I have them separated.
Yeah. The only reason is the step we're going to do right now. So I have the chocolate melting here. Essentially what we're going to do is we're going to take the whites and we're going to beat them into soft peaks. It's going to be a lot easier for me to achieve those peaks when the egg is warm. So really it's just a timing issue. If you did it cold, you'd be able to. It wouldn't be a problem, I don't think. But pastry chefs are all about efficiency, so they probably say that because they want you to be able to whip it easily. And that's a great question. Yes?
That's interesting because I always learned to use a copper bowl cold from, put in the freezer to whip eggs into the whites.
It's funny, we use a copper bowl or a cold bowl for whipped cream. I wouldn't be surprised if some of the nuances or things that you learn, sometimes there's variation. So for me, I try not to worry too much. I know for a fact that whipping warm cream is very hard. So the cold cream is huge. I don't know whether it really matters whether you let the eggs be cold or not. I think that both are going to lead to similar results. But I just, this one, I just wanted to show you guys what the family recipe was and what they, it's interesting, like when you learn a recipe from your family, you don't know, is there a reason behind that, or did grandma just do that for, it's funny. It's like, it makes you more aware of everything. But I would say that the grandmothers had a lot of wisdom, so probably there's things that they knew that that were helpful. Any other questions? Oh, that's a great question. This recipe, the majority of the weight in this recipe is chocolate. So I don't spare any expense when it comes to buying chocolate. At the salty market, we have a cookie. I think I might lose 50 cents every time I serve that. I'm determined because it's a beautiful cookie and it's made with couverture. So it's a chocolate that I get. It's a Belgian chocolate, and I would recommend just any of the. If you can look, I'm trying to think of where you could get that. You could probably look online, and if you just look at some of the larger chocolate producers for baking, it really makes a difference. That's a great question.
So is it dark chocolate?
Yeah, it's 65%. So the numbers with the chocolate, in case somebody doesn't know about that, the numbers are just the amount of sugar ratio to cacao. So anything above 72 is going to be a bit bitter, and I love that. You know, we call it semi-sweet. And once you get below 60, you're kind of pushing it because you're adding more sugar. Now, like our Hershey bar, just to give reference, is probably more the opposite, like 35% chocolate and 70% sugar. So you really want to stay away from the commercially made fake chocolate. And you could do this recipe with Ghirardelli. I think that's pretty much what my family used. But now that I have a restaurant and I'm at the Salty Market, I love it, and we always buy really nice chocolate. So I turn this down a little bit. You don't want, when you're working with chocolate, the thing that chocolate does not like water. I am going to put some coffee in this recipe, which is unique, but you don't want to get water inside this chocolate bowl, okay? Another thing about chocolate that it doesn't like is it doesn't like very high heat. So even if you see the steam like that, you can actually turn off the burner, okay? I'm really gonna, I love chocolate because it's very precise and it's low and slow. It's not a speed thing. If you're seeing like the steam coming out of the sides to melt your chocolate, you don't need to do that. Just let the double boiler work its magic, and after the chocolate gets past our body temperature, it melts, okay? Yes?
Are you going to give us this recipe?
Yes, this recipe actually was published in a cookbook that I helped illustrate and work with my friend Susie Nielsen for the Press Hall. So you mind handing those out for me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Using another to microwave chocolate.
Yeah, it's okay to microwave chocolate, and chocolate's fascinating. When you go to pastry school, it's usually a 2-year program for the better schools in all culinary, and you have to choose a track. So you choose pastry or you choose savory, and I had already done a lot of savory, so I wanted to learn pastry. But chocolatiering was a whole semester, its own class. It's actually the most complex food molecule out there. The next one down is coffee, which is also really, really molecularly complex. But when they look at chocolate under a microscope, they actually think it's like from outer space or something, because it has, no, I'm serious, because it has like some crazy number more of molecules in it, and just the construction of it is so much more complex than other food. So I have this, I didn't want to show you guys anything with a machine, and if I wanted to, I could have brought like what would they call it, like a KitchenAid, but this whole recipe can just be done by whisk. And I want to whip the eggs, I'm going to whip the whites, and I want them to be essentially a little past soft peaks. So in pastry school, they would train you that you want to have 3 different types of peaks. There's soft, there's medium, and there's stiff. So this one right here is very close to soft, and when you do soft, it's going to fall off the whisk, but it's not going to be any liquid. I can tell there's still a little too much liquid. When it's medium, it's going to stick to the whisk, but it's going to fall down like you'll see the gravity. And when it's stiff, you should be able to actually take the whisk and hold it up, and it will be going the other direction. So in this case, I want to focus on getting the egg whites somewhere between soft and medium peaks. If I go all the way to stiff, they're going to weep in the recipe, and it's going to make a texture, or what they call a crumb of the cake, that's too dry. So this is actually kind of an important part technique-wise. to get the egg whites the way we want them.
This one you said is soft.
Yeah, I would say somewhere between soft and medium. So just past soft, but not too much. And so when everybody signed up for the class today with the eggs, what are the main things that you want to learn about eggs? Or was it more the chocolate cake? I'm sure most people know a chocolate cake, right? We just, what about the onion glaze? That's the next one we're going to learn. Have you learned that? Have most people made onion glaze?
No.
When you see it, you're going to say, why doesn't everyone make this? It's so easy. So, yeah.
Years ago, we used to eat raw eggs. And then, of course, there was this whole scare about salmonella.
Yeah.
So how, I mean, this is really for the farmer, how do people know that local eggs here are safe things?
Right, that's a great question. Well, I know we have some nurses here, so nurses will probably answer that for us, but I'll take a stab at it. One thing is that this egg has been washed. So that takes a lot of work for Victoria, and it's one of the reasons why local eggs cost a lot of money, and the farmers work hard to bring it to the public. If you had some sort of, if these eggs weren't clean, then it would be more of a risk. And I would also say that it has to do with the conditions that the chickens are in. You know, if the chickens are living in unsafe conditions, then probably they're the product they produce. But no, I've always wondered that too, because I've been eating farm eggs for years. When I was in my 20s, we used to put raw yolks in protein shakes that me and Chad used to make of the juice. I mean, I don't know, besides, is there anybody know why certain...
Well, I would just mention that when you wash an egg, you're washing, there's a natural protective coating on an egg when it's hatched, you know, or when it's laid. And so that makes it more counter stable, so you can leave them out on your counter. But once you wash that protective antibacterial coating off, then you should refrigerate your eggs after that.
This is one thing Europeans don't wash, right? This is
Right.
why when you go to grocery stores in Europe, you see that the eggs are not in a fridge. Europeans leave them on counters. Yes. But I think they vaccinate, right? I think they
I think
vaccinate.
they do, and then a
with
lot of
their-
people will wash their eggs just before using, so if there is some schlug on it, that, you know, you're washing off and then make your eggs.
There's also the monoculture too. So if you have lots and lots of chickens in one small space, laying lots and lots of
Yes.
eggs, and then you're washing the eggs, the permeability of the shell is more susceptible to bacteria because of the conditions that the chickens are living in. So that's why I would say local can lays a safer egg in general, because nobody's raising tons and tons of chickens for lots and lots of eggs.
So when the egg comes out of the chicken, it has this protective coating?
Yes,
From the
exactly.
egg.
That makes it non-permeable.
Okay.
But the perfect package naturally.
Yes, it is the perfect package, yeah. Says our registered dietitian.
What about cholesterol, the big debate?
Yeah, it is a big debate. I mean, there's mixed reviews in research, but a lot more is coming out now that dietary cholesterol doesn't have as much effect on your blood cholesterol levels, and more like saturated fat is what you should watch out for with your cholesterol.
There's also recent research, that's evidence-based research that's coming out right now, where they're doing a lot of tests on local food versus other fruits and vegetables and other foods. And it has to do with the time of transport. It also has to do with the micronutrients in the soil and how everything works synergistically to create the fruit or vegetable or local egg that has the most nutrients in it. So that is actually the item that will keep you the healthiest. And they're doing all this research now on how to keep this is cancers, this is cardiometabolic diseases, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot to be said for local food.
Yes.
Fran, did you have a comment about that?
No, I actually have a different question. Probably not very popular, but for those who are sensitive to dairy, how would you advise not making this if you had to make it with a butter substitute, like a plant-based butter, or do you think it would still come out okay?
Yeah, I think it would. I enjoy trying to make some of the recipes vegan, you know?
Yeah. Well, it's not a lot of eggs. It won't be vegan, but it's dairy-free without the...
True, so it's the dairy part that...
It's the dairy part that's come for me.
Yeah, well I never tried this recipe with a plant-based butter, but it seems to me like a lot of the products that we have, like at the salty market, we carry plant-based butter, and it's pretty advanced, it seems like, what they've been able to create with a lot of the products. So I would imagine, even if the texture of the cake is different, a lot of baking is about the crumb that you create in the end, which is the texture of the cake itself. One of the things that we have in our advantage when we're baking is that we're using sugar and beautiful chocolate and things like that. So even if the texture of the product is a little different, I still think it would be delicious.
So you're pouring those in and then mixing it into the...
Yeah, so this chocolate basically has melted now with the sugar and the butter. And I'm going to take I've let it come down a little bit. I turned it off. So you don't want to put the eggs in here when it's ripping hot, but it's not very hot. Like I said, I don't want a lot of steam with the chocolate. So roughly speaking, that's somewhere between like around 80 degrees is what I'm looking for here. And I'm just mixing in one yolk at a time. And the reason we do that is because the egg is going to do many things in this recipe, but one of the things it's going to do is it's going to leaven the cake. So the egg yolk being incorporated like that actually increases its potential to be a leavener. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to slowly work in this, these are the yolks, okay? I mean the whites. Yep, these are the whites. Okay? So it's medium, okay? And we're going to basically fold it into here. I'm going to do this in batches. And we'll talk about this a little bit when we do the creme brulee recipe or the anglaise. But we're folding this product in so that we don't break the whites. And we really want to be, this is a part of the recipe that you want to be, have fun with it. This takes technique. You want to fold these whites in there without crushing the structure of the foam that you just created. So on a scientific level, this is a foam. And the longer it sits, the more it's going to break unless it has a stabilizer in it. A stabilizer, the example would be like cream of tartar or an acid. You can also use a tiny bit of lemon juice. But I have to work quickly here, and I have to not crush my egg on the other side. And I also, a lot of people think that you can't fold with like I use a spatula here or a whisk. You can use both. Put this down here. So I have this product right here. You'll notice that the recipe that my great-grandmother used didn't have salt in it. I wanted to be authentic to it. I still think a little bit of salt in this recipe would be good. Also, in case you missed it, I did add a tiny bit of coffee to the chocolate when I had it here. So that was another ingredient that I had.
So Liam,
Yeah.
one question. I missed that. Did you add like a tablespoon of coffee that you made? Is it espresso?
Yeah, I just had some coffee that I brought from the store. It doesn't have to be hot. It could be espresso, which is nice. But I love this recipe because this is a place where you can get pretty creative and not have to worry about it changing the outcome of the... It could also be a tiny bit of orange extract, almond extract that you can get from the spice company. It could be more coffee if you wanted more coffee. But no, that's just what my family used. And like I said, they serve this at Passover. They call this the Charlie Chaplin chocolate cake. I think that somehow in the history they had some experience with him making this cake and loving this cake. So All right, so I have this batter now, and this is ready. That's that simple. It's just melted chocolate. Yes.
I was curious, it says vanilla paste.
Yes.
I don't know what that is. Paste?
Vanilla paste. I was saving it for you guys to show you for the anglaise, and we're gonna put it in the sauce that I'll serve with this. So I didn't put it in here, but yeah, it would be fine to put in vanilla, orange, almond, coffee, pretty much any flavoring that you want, you could add to the chocolate at this stage. I'm gonna do a couple things here. I did no room for mistakes when you're a pastry chef. You have to have a backup plan, okay? So I did cook one before I got here, in case something bad happened. But I'm actually gonna cook it in these molds because I want it to cook a little quicker. And I want you guys to be able to smell it in the oven and see it come out of the oven. So if I cook it in here, it's only going to take about 25 minutes. If I cook it in the springform pan, which is what my family always cooked it in, it would take more like 45 minutes to an hour for it to be fully done. Not an hour, but like 45 minutes solid.
What size is your springform?
This is springform because I can, thank you for the question, so I can just pop up this right here and the whole side will come out.
Is it an 8
9-inch?
ounce?
Oh, that's, I think the recipe is for, does it say 9 or 10?
10.
All right. And going back to Chef Donatelli, he's an amazing guy. He was the executive chef of Universal Studios. He ran all the parks, and he came to North Carolina with his wife and 2 kids, and he wrote the curriculum for the state of North Carolina for all the pastry schools in North Carolina. But he used to make us, the first day of class, we had to take this product, and he would make us put it on our finger, and we had to eat it. And he never, ever, ever allowed this or blue food coloring. That was his 2 like. So I saved a little bit of this product. This is just butter, and I don't want to make my friends feel bad because I'm in the restaurant industry. I mean, Chef Donatelli was old school, as we say, but a lot of us use this product, and it's pretty flavor neutral. But it does, I guess it does make a difference to someone who's being, who, you know, butter is better, so you can always just save a little bit of butter. Any other questions about the cake before we move into the brûlée? Yeah?
Did you preheat the oven?
I did.
And what's the temp that you...
So, that's a great question. So, Chef Donatelli used to say, and this is a great quote, ovens don't burn food, people do. So, he wouldn't let us use any recipes that we found on the internet. We were not allowed to use, we had to find book in print. So we spent a lot of time in the libraries. And we used the pastry program, used an amazing book which is called Advanced Pastry Techniques. It's a French culinary book. And then there's another one that's printed by the CIA every year called Professional Chef. That gives a lot of baseline recipes. If you guys are interested in some of these recipes, I would highly recommend what they call Pro Chef or Professional Chef. It's published every single year, and you can get Pro Chef Baking or you can get Pro Chef Culinary, and it's like it gives you like a base of all the techniques. So, all right, so, but yeah, I got on a tangent, The oven, I used a convection oven at work today. The convection oven runs about 25 degrees hotter, so like 325 degrees on a convection oven at work is probably the same thing as 350 degrees on a home oven. But that said, you also could have an oven that's running hot. So instead of burning the food, I would say just start low. I try to do 325, that's my favorite temperature. Because it's hot enough to make it happen quickly, but not so hot that I worry about burning the product. And I would say don't always take the recipe's times in the oven and the temperatures as the rule of, you know, it doesn't have to be, there's some flexibility in that. Also, you want to think about the fact that there's different textures here, so if I wanted to, I could make this cake and it could be more dense. Like one way you can achieve that is if I cook this cake in a water bath. So when I was at the Admiral with Elliot, a lot of what we did that made the food unique was not the recipes themselves, but the presentation of the food. So, for example, this cake, we might have taken the cake and we might have cooked it, and instead of serving it as the cake, we would just crumble the cake on the plate, have some different sauces, quenelle or ice creams. The technique of the plating changes it a lot, but the texture of the cake is basically the same. So you guys can have a little fun with that. Like if you want the cake to be denser, you can cook it in a water bath. If you want it to be more airy, you could cook it at a higher temperature and it would leaven faster. So there's different ways to achieve that. Or like another cake that we used a lot, we put into an air siphon and we would actually cook it in the microwave. It's a new technique of cake making that's fascinating, but essentially the cake cooks quicker than the egg set, so it makes for like it looks like honeycomb inside the cake.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're gonna put this in the oven, okay? So I'll throw this in the oven. Any questions about the cake process?
Question?
Yeah.
When, do you always use unsalted butter for baking?
I always do, yes. I like to, I like to be able to control the amount of salt in the recipe. If you guys have seen one of the bakeries that I like a lot, Tucci, she has the Milk Cafe. She worked with David Chang. She's an amazing baker. And she started telling people maybe like 8 years ago or something that they should double the salt in their recipes because the salt in the baking world has a big influence on the finished product because it's actually an understated ingredient. Meaning, I don't know if you've tried bread that they forgot to season with salt, but it has a very, your mouth knows that it's not there, but you don't know what's missing. So the addition of extra salt can be good. I don't like it, though, as a pastry chef. I like to, like I said, going back to the deconstructed plates, I brought Malden salt. I'm going to plate a demo for you guys at the very end of class that just does a little bit of the anglaise, the cake. I put Malden sea salt and a little bit of fresh fruit. I like to be able to have control on that aspect, so I don't really love having salt in the cake itself. All right, so we have the cake in the oven, and hopefully it will cook quick. We have, this is an induction burner, okay? And now what we're going to learn is we're going to learn a little bit about making a custard. So the eggs we can use as a leavener, but we can also use them as a thickener. And that's what's so cool about the eggs. I brought this book, Cookwise. It's a great resource. They have it here at the library if you're ever interested. It talks a lot about the science of different aspects of the kitchen. But the eggs are fascinating because they have so many different things that they do molecularly in the food. Any questions about that? So everybody's made a cake, I assume, right? And what about people, have they made ice cream before?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. What about crème brûlée? Made that one? Okay. All those things, the crème brûlée, the ice cream, and the anglaise are essentially the same recipe. They're just egg yolks with a little bit of sugar and vanilla that we're going to add later. And we're going to temper them. We're going to make a milk or a milk and cream, and we're going to temper the eggs and the milk. And when I say temper, what I mean is I want to pour that hot liquid over the eggs without cooking the eggs. So I have to do it gradually or it's going to actually scramble the eggs. And in the case of ice cream or the brûlée, I would do that and then I would cook the brûlée in a custard cup. So I could take this mixture that we're about to make and I would actually cook it in a cup form in a water bath at 300 degrees. So the brûlée is a great recipe to look up. It's not very hard and people kind of avoid it, I think, because they think it's going to be so difficult. But I'm going to show you today how easy it is to make this, and then you're going to be able to make it at home. And this one is going to be a little bit more complex. Let me just grab my spatula. Give me 1 second. So set up for this one, I sell Victoria's eggs at work at the Salty Market in Truro. So I have 1 cup of milk, 1 cup of heavy cream for my mise en place. I have 6 of her egg yolks. I save the whites and use them back at the shop. We're going to make a meringue. And then I have 6 tablespoons of sugar. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to get my milk and I'm going to heat it up. And this is a flavored milk, so this could have a lot of variety for different glazes that you're making. This could be a green tea anglaise. This could be an Earl Grey anglaise. In this case, I'm going to be very, very traditional, and I'm going to serve a vanilla anglaise, okay? And that's usually what you would make in the French kitchen, but there are other options of flavors of the anglaise. And you would always flavor whether it be the ice cream, or the brûlée, or the anglaise, you would always flavor the milk stage. So we would essentially, I'm heating up heavy cream and milk, and I could put a flavoring actually right there in the pot with whatever I'm making. I turn this on. So yeah, that's kind of fun because you could steam, you could put something here, and you don't need sugar. So in this case, when I'm making the brûlée, I want to heat up my milk, okay, and I want to add it to my egg mixture. And if I, Sarah, you might, oh, you have a baby. I just need to wash out this bowl, and thank you so much. So what I was saying is that you could basically steep whatever flavor you want in this cream, and the sugar is not what's going to set the custard. It's the eggs and the milk and the temperature of those that's going to set the custard. So this also could be a savory application. For example, it's wonderful. I worked with Jeremiah Reardon when he was here in P-Town years ago. We used to make, we would cook morels, mushrooms, that we foraged, and we would cook them with shallot, and then we would add the shallot, thyme, and morel mushrooms to the cream, and then we would put that into the egg base, and we would cook it in a mold, and it's a flan. So the morel flan would be served under steak. It's delicious. It's a great thank you so much. Sorry.
That's amazing.
Yeah, no, that's a great dish. And again, going back to the power of the food itself and the technique and the ingredients, and if you know the general premise of what you're doing in terms of ratios, so like 6 yolks to 2 cups of milk or milk and cream, you have a lot of flexibility because you can go in any direction you want with flavor. We could add whatever we want to this liquid.
Did you say you also have the whites in there?
No, the whites actually just got kept for a separate purpose. Is that, yeah. In this case, I don't want the whites. I just want the yolks. And the reason that is happening is because we're actually going to take this. Cream. We're going to mix it into the yolks, and then we're going to return it back to the stove to keep cooking. And we're going to bring it to 82 to 83 degrees Celsius, or 183 to 184 degrees on the stove. I'm going to show you guys how to do it just by eye, because I'm a pastry chef, and I'll show you it's easy to just look for. They've been making this recipe in the kitchen way before they had digital thermometers, so you don't need that. But in culinary school, They would always make us use the thermometer at first because we were learning the exact temperatures that this chemical process happens. And similarly, those temperature ranges are very important because if I was making a brûlée, it would be the exact same technique, but it would be happening in your oven set at 300 degrees. And it would cook for, let's say, 20 to 30 minutes. That same internal temperature of the custard would actually set the custard. So in the brûlée case, you're going to bring it to 185, and it's going to set. So that's what makes the actual process. But in the case of crème anglaise, which means English cream, we're going to essentially taper this. We're going to mix this into the yolks. I'm going to put a little bit of sugar here in the milk. Half of it. That's so it doesn't boil over. If you add sugar to your, it's still going to be in the recipe the same amount, which is 6 tablespoons. But I add it to my milk when I'm steeping it and bring it to a boil. I want this to, you never boil milk, you scald it. And you basically want to be right under scalding for this recipe. So I want to get it to where it looks like it's about to boil, but it's a classic meme for the bakers that we turn around and we see our pot in the back of the kitchen boiling over. So if you add a little bit of sugar to right there, it's ready to come off. If I had just waited, but you'd see if you did this recipe, if you didn't add the sugar and you did add the sugar to 2 different test batches, the one that didn't have sugar would boil over quicker than the one that has sugar. So in the CIA and that pro chef cookbook that I was telling you about, they're training their people basically to add half the sugar to the milk and half the sugar to the yolks. So again, I want to go back for a second because I guess it's the theme for me of the class. The magic is the egg itself, the ingredient, how good it is, the technique, the temperatures. You have a lot of flexibility when it comes to what it tastes like and the exact thickness that you want. If I added more egg yolks, like if I added 3 more egg yolks to this, then my anglaise would be a lot thicker. And if I wanted my anglaise, traditionally the anglaise should be like a nice bisque. It should be pourable so that I can easily go out tableside and serve it over a soufflé. But it shouldn't be, it should also be thick. It should be nappé. It should hold to the back of the spoon, which is something that I'm going to show you guys in 1 second. So I mixed this. I've taken off the milk. I went and got this product today. I love it. I also got some vanilla beans for myself. But these ones, they're like $5 each. I'm just showing you guys a separate product that I actually really like. This is absolutely not vanilla extract. Vanilla extract is a completely different product. But vanilla paste, chef's approval. I love this product. It's great. It's less mess. I don't need to bring out a knife. It's essentially what I'm getting out of that by scraping it. It just comes in a bottle. So it's really nice. It's very high quality. I'm not even going to measure it in this case. I'm just going to put a pinch of that in there. And that's going to give it a strong vanilla. Yes?
Yes.
I read recently that you could make your own vanilla extract and continue to use those same vanilla beans for years and years. Like, I sort of figured there was shelf life to it, but they recommended a high quality vodka and put the beans in, and then you can scrape it, but just continue to keep adding the alcohol to your beans. And
wow,
so
that's cool. I knew that Chef Donatelli always had a bottle of vanilla that he was making in his office, but I never saw him use them. I think that we would use different beans, but I'm sure it's such a stable product. The vanilla is so amazing. So, I just wanted people to smell this, and maybe we could just stand up for 1 second and come over here. So, I have the vanilla here, all right? Yeah, it smells great, right? They sell it at the spice company. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah? And it comes out good, right? Nice. Okay. I love that. Okay, so we're going to take this product right here, and maybe if we all sit back down, you'll be able to see it again. All right. All right. Everybody got a whiff? Yeah, it's got a good flavor. Yeah, that was about a teaspoon that I put in. The main reason, oh.
The alcohol content that you feel changes the flavor of you use the extract?
Oh, thanks for asking that, friend. The main thing I think, because we had you said someone made vanilla at home, right? Yes, yes. So, I've done it too. It's a great recipe. You said you use brandy. I like brandy a little bit better than vodka personally. But essentially, it's that simple. You're just going to take like 8 to 10 beans, and you're going to. Is that what you use?
I just put I have small jars like you get.
Uh-huh.
Spice jar, and I've had a bean in there. I have it sit for 3 months, so I'm always rotating. Like when I finish one jar, I fill it up, stick it in the back, and I have other ones. I have like 3 going.
Are you using your same vanilla?
I have used the same.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
okay.
So
Brandy or vodka?
we always use brandy. Chef Donatelli always had 1 quart, a glass jar. He would use 8 to 10 beans, and he would make a infused brandy. And it took a long time, so it would take 3 months before it was ready. But it sounds like Nurse Cope was saying that which I agree, you can keep using the beans. So it sounds like something that you can just have in your kitchen at all times. That's way better than what you find at the store. The vanilla extract, going back to Fran's question, the reason that I don't like the vanilla extract is that there's nothing of substance there. I mean, the bean itself, when I'm scraping the bean, you're going to see the same thing that you see in the paste. It's got a texture to it, and it's those actual, it's that texture that you see in the end product. We are going to strain the product, but it's going to be totally different than using vanilla extract, which is really just a tea or like an extract of the actual product itself. But I want that product I want the bean itself, I want some of that meat that's inside of it. So going back, I go here, I have my yolks, a little bit of sugar, half the sugar here, half the sugar there. Now, again, so you're not intimidated at home. If I wanted to, I could take this exact same recipe, or one that you can just look online. I could take this recipe, I could have a coconut, for example, and I could steep coconut in here. Or I could find a local, I could have chocolate in there. And I could put it in a ramekin, which I then put in a water bath, and I could cook it in the oven at 300 degrees, covered. And it would make a brûlée, it would make a custard or a pot de crème. Okay, there's many cultures, a flan. These are all this same technique that you just saw. And similarly, what I could do is I could take this product and I could run it through an ice cream machine, which would basically infuse air into the product at the same time that it's freezing it. So what that happens is then you have a relationship between the frozen air, the crystals that are made from the sugar, and the eggs and the milk. But in this case, what I'm going to do is one step further. I'm going to take this and I'm going to put it back in the pot itself. And I'm going to cook it on the stove top to 183 degrees. And I'm going to make sure that I don't go past that temperature. And in this case, I'm actually going to do it by eye. I did bring a thermometer, and it is sometimes, if you were to walk away from this recipe, it would be easy for it to burn. Or just get ruined, because you can actually make scrambled eggs. But
So low temperature.
But low temperature and stirring all the time. And then we're actually going to strain it, and this is going to be the sauce. So there's 2 things that we're looking for And we can use the thermometer to see how close we are to that temperature. But we also are going to do 2 tests. One, if you look it on the internet a lot of times, or a lot of the books, they talk about the bubble test. The bubble test is that you're going to actually see the air bubbles on this recipe change, and it's going to look, you can almost see it thickening right in front of you. It's like magic. The other way that I was always taught is we're going to get the range that we want. We're going to cook it to that temperature, and you can test it by taking the spoon. When you rub your finger like this, it's going to actually hold. It's called nappé, and it's the back of the spoon. So you use the back of the spoon in the French kitchen, you dip it in the anglaise, and then when you hold it up, it actually holds its shape on the spoon. So that's how they tested it before they had thermometers. And another thing to say about this is the timing of all this is very important. So it's very easy to, I'm going to basically get that temperature that I want, and I'm going to shock the bottom of the pan in the ice water. That way I stop the process right away, and I'll strain it to finish off. But essentially, this is anglaise, so it would be very easy to make this. You would cook the cake, or if you made, let's say you made like an apple cake in the fall, anglaise is great to have like this. You can let it chill if you want to, and it gets even thicker. But a lot of times, anglaise is fantastic, like we'll try at the end of the class in a minute. I love it served warm. So traditionally in the French kitchen, they would serve this like tableside at the end of the meal. So
As like a custard? Or?
Yeah, as a custard, just like ice cream that's a sauce. But it's delicious because the soufflé would come out of the oven and it's warm, and then you have a cold sauce, the anglaise, that has this beautiful texture from the eggs and the sugar, and the combination is just divine. So yeah, again, this is one, if you do have a thermometer at home, you can, but you want to just stir it constantly. I can't walk away from the sauce, and you want to basically look for the sauce to change a little bit and just start to boil. We'll just test it so that you can do it like you guys would see at home. You would see it here. This is currently at 70, it goes quickly, 76. So we want to keep going because we want to go to around 82 to 84 on Celsius. So we have this. Any questions about the anglaise?
Question about, you said if you wanted to make the custard, you bake it at 350 for approximately how long?
Yes, so the crème brûlée, we would basically make the crème brûlée. You don't have to put it back on the stove, so you would do this in the oven, but you would cook it for 25 to 35 minutes. And that said, the water on that could vary a lot. If the water that you put around it is cold, so I don't know if you guys can see this, but it's gotten thicker now, and I want to shock the bottom, okay? It's gotten, you can see like this, and when I rub my finger like that, you see how it holds? So it's actually transformed right in front of our eyes. At this point, it's always a good idea to strain it.
What are you straining out of it?
It's not that I'm straining out of it, and what it is I'm trying not to, the eggs are very sensitive at this point. So the straining is a texture thing. So that's a great question. So you do have if I had used a vanilla bean, then it would be important to get that vanilla bean out. Same thing if I'm using coconut, like you wouldn't cook, when you're making the brûlée, you're going to let the custard steep, but you're going to strain it before you cook it. But the main thing that I'm doing, aside from straining out the actual vanilla bean, is I'm making sure that the texture of the egg is there. So it's more about the smoothness of the end product. there's kind of a spectrum there, and if you really want your anglaise to be very, very smooth, that's the goal of it. So I continue to work it. Again, there's kind of a range there. If I wanted it to be a lot thicker, I could use more egg yolks. But in this case, I want it to be pourable, so I want it a little bit thinner. Yeah, it's got a good smell, right? It's holding its shape on the spoon. It's got the nappe. If I put this in the fridge, it would thicken probably. It's kind of hard to explain, but if you're thinking of thickening as degrees, it's going to be a good amount thicker, like maybe 2 to 5 degrees more thick as it thicks. So you have to think about that when you're making the texture that you want, because after you chill it, it's going to be more thick than when you created it. The heat keeps it thinner. But this is great because this base right now is ready as a sauce, and it could also be put through the ice cream machine, like I said. And some ice cream recipes actually want you to bring it to the right anglaise temperature. Some are more simple, and you're literally just making the tempered part of the recipe and then just putting it through a machine. But this is a wonderful sauce to learn because I could put fresh lemon peel in this right now. I could put brandy in this right now. I could put almond extract, orange extract. I could do so many things. And it's going to be a wonderful complement to the cake because there's that rich chocolate and then you'll have this nice velvety vanilla.
The lemon peel wouldn't curdle it?
Say what?
The lemon peel wouldn't curdle it?
Thanks for that question. The lemon peel could curdle it if it was cooked, but at this point that it's stable, you can add any lemon peel to it and it won't cook it at all. And that's only if it's inside it while you're cooking it. Yeah?
What about adding lavender? I think I've had a lavender quite a bit.
Yeah, I love lavender. It's one of my favorite plants to infuse in the custard. I also, going back to the savory applications, like I did a dish that I came up with at the Blackfish where we made like a zucchini bread, and I served it with grilled lamb and a lavender anglaise that I didn't put sugar into. And it was a great recipe because it's more like a sabayon. A sabayon is just essentially the same thing as this, but I'm starting it with wine as opposed to cream. So, and there's so many ranges of what you could do with this anglaise recipe as a base. Any other questions about that? Yes?
If you made vanilla bean ice cream, would you strain or not strain?
Oh, that's great. If you use the vanilla paste, you don't need to strain. The vanilla bean you would need to strain because it would mess up your machine.
Okay.
I would say my answer about that is in pastry school and in general with cooking and more professionally, we strain a lot in the French kitchen. So we run through the chinois, we run through the china cap. There's like different levels in the French kitchen of straining. And we always lean towards straining your product because it gives it a more refined mouthfeel. Not necessary though from a technical perspective. If you were trying to make something more rustic or you had some beautiful fruit, for example, from a local farm, maybe you really kind of want that texture of a little bit of skin or nuance from the fruit in your ice cream base. So I kind of go both ways with that. I mean, I make like another recipe that's fantastic. I mean, you don't even need an ice cream machine. You could make this same sauce, put the lemon peel that I was talking about. You could have the sugar, so I could go from 6 ounces to 3 ounces. I could put in the lemon peel and I could put in a little bit of lemon juice and I can just put it into a shallow pan and put it in the freezer, and it's a lemon granita. I mean, it's done. It's easy. It's not, a lot of times when you learn this technique, you don't need to be too caught up into it's all going to taste delicious, basically. It's just when you're in pastry, you really are so focused on the end texture that a granita, the flake of the ice is going to be totally different than a refined ice cream that has a machine that has all that air whipped into it. So it's texture. It's not, but you have a lot of freedom there. Yeah.
How's the soufflé?
It's good. Let's go. I'll go look at it.
I don't want it to burn. There you go. Smelling it. Yeah.
So the soufflé is about done, and I'm going to take it out of the oven in a minute and plate some, and we're going to serve it with a little bit of the anglaise and a little bit of the mandarin orange and a pinch of the malted sea salt, which is my favorite. Again, oh yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just had a question about checking souffle.
Yeah.
Does opening and closing the oven deflate?
Yes, it does. It does matter, and it's one of the, I don't know if we still use that word, but the wise tales that we say in the kitchen. And it's the structure of the cake is influenced by the temperature change. So in this case, I checked on the souffle, but I didn't bother it for a long time. It would make a big difference if you're antsy and you're watching the cake if I open that oven the first 5 to 10 minutes. Or another thing that would make a big difference is if I'm in a commercial kitchen and I'm cooking souffle, but somebody else is cooking something else and they keep opening the door. But generally speaking, once you get to, when you're making a bread or any sort of pastry item, and once you get past a certain spring point where the crumb forms molecularly, then you're safe. Then it won't, it's more about the end texture of how crispy it's going to be. It's not going to actually deflate. And to that point, when you do make a souffle, when I take it out of the oven, like when this one came out of the oven before I got here today, it was up here. Yeah. But it is going to shrink. So that's why, like in the restaurant industry, when we were in the French kitchen, a lot of the earlier, like a very traditional, they wouldn't actually fire the souffle until it's ordered. So you would essentially be asked at the beginning of the meal, not at the end, would you like to try chef's souffle tonight? And the kitchen would then know, they'd be on alert, that the table 6 wants souffles. And then basically we would time it on demand of the waiter. And the waiter, once they picked up silverware for the last course, would fire souffle and then be basically rushing to get that souffle out to the table. But that's a great question, because there's some deflation on the souffle is natural and part of the magic. But you really, the things that you want to be careful with the souffle that would make a difference is crushing the foam on the egg at the beginning, or drastic temperature changes. That would also make a difference. All right? Sure. Any other questions there? Yes?
Sugar. There's so many different types of sugar.
Yes.
Is this just straight white?
Yeah, this is white sugar. I like organic sugar, obviously. We use that a lot at Salty Market. And sugar obviously has this legacy of being this colonial ingredient that has done a lot of devastation around the world. So being mindful of what sugar you get is important. I don't want to not pay attention to that. But luckily they have regulated the sugar industry more, so it's not as unsafe as it was in the past, or cruel. And you know, in this case we used a white sugar. I could have used brown. I like using different sugars or different sweeteners. I don't like to, you know, a great example would be to use an unrefined, like brown sugar in this cake. We could have done that and not used refined sugar. and it probably would have changed the texture, but it would not be a problem. Again, molecularly speaking, when you're looking at this food under a microscope, the sugar is not what's making that cake rise. It's the eggs and the chocolate, or the eggs and the cream being brought to that certain temperature. All right? Well, again, we're going to try a little bit of cake. It's an honor to be able to teach you guys and be here with you. I hope everyone feels confident leaving the class today about what an anglaise is, what a brûlée is. Making a basic custard stovetop is what we did. And there's lots of range to experiment with that, whether it be savory or sweet. And then obviously, I'm always grateful to the grandmothers and the fact that I have this cake in my recipe, because I've used this cake many amazing meals, and I know it doesn't disappoint. So if you want to try it at home, it's a great thing to cook. Okay? And if you can, just give me a second, maybe take a quick break, and we're going to gather over here, and I'm just going to plate a little bit of cake. Okay? Thank you so much.